I think I've stopped looking for home these days. That feeling of not having your own land. I feel at home wherever I am.
Hi guys, my name is Thayap Namri Songze Lindop, and today's guest is a real storytelling musician who carries the soul of Tibet within him. Tenzin Choegyal, he grew up in a Tibetan refugee community in Dharamsala, India in the 70s and 80s, listening to Bollywood, Indian classical music, and the ancient melodies of the Himalayas. Now he's based in Brisbane, Australia, and he's played for huge audiences. And he confided in me why he sometimes is not invited to play at Tibetan gatherings, although being a Grammy-nominated artist. We also talk about his experiences when working with other musicians, sometimes even famous ones, why he thinks it's important to do exactly that, what you do best, and that Tibetan arts seems to place more emphasis on traditional religious arts. Before we get started, I'm doing this podcast in my own free time. It's a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of work and costs involved. So I'd be really grateful if you'd consider supporting me. Please take a look at the show notes for how to do so best. All right, thank you very much, and we are off to the races. Dranyen, your traditional Tibetan instrument, alongside a didgeridoo from Australia and accompanied by a Mongolian doing throat singing. And so I was wondering, do you wake up in the morning and think, hey, what new sound can I invent today?
I had to create a piece for the Asia Pacific Screen Awards as the opening music and the closing music. I was thinking, what can I put together that will have that feeling of being inclusive, but at the same time have the traditional Aboriginal Australian, who is in this piece. Actually, there's all of them are my friends that you're talking about. It's William Barton, who is an amazing didgeridoo player. In general, I think all around the globe, I think that instrument is known by the name didgeridoo, but actual name is yidaki.
I didn't know that. I know the sound, but I didn't know what it's called.
So the actual name is Yidaki, and William Barton plays it so beautifully. And then I had Bayan Batarsuk from Ulaanbaatar. He is an amazing Morinhur player. And then Hume, the throat singing that they do. So it was a fun putting it together. I like the puzzle of how all the sounds and music beautifully speaks to anyone. The geographical boundaries that we have put, separating ourselves from this part of the world to the another part of human being.
So is it important to be friends to make good music?
I think probably you don't have to be friends. You have to be very open-minded. In a way, like Dalai Lama says, meet everyone as your brothers and sisters or a friend that you haven't met before. Anyone that you meet newly, I think meet them as a friend. So in making music, I think it works super, like with that kind of attitude and with that kind of motivation. I think it kind of breaks the boundaries that we have put, the geographical boundaries that we have put. So music is like, it kind of binds everyone together. And, even if you speak linguistically totally different, but we make music, the language of music is same. It speaks to your heart. Sometimes what I say is like music is like drifting clouds where, the clouds are not bothered by the geographical boundaries the human have put. And the cloud will drift from one boundary to another boundary without having any bias or anything like that. So music is like that, I think.
And especially, I suppose that when you play your music or you create music, you must be sharing something personal as well, right? Because it's something you came up with. So that's why I thought, if you were making music with somebody you really didn't like, it might be more difficult.
I think it depends upon what are you making the music for? Because music has many different abilities. There's the ceremonial music, there's the music that is for entertainment, and then there's the music that is for totally like a philosophical kind of discussion that evokes that kind of discussion. And then there's the music that is fully your personal kind of story. And then there's the music that is like communals, that tells the communal story. Music, it's almost like water. When you pour the water into a glass, it will take the shape of that glass. And if you pour it in a jar, which is circular, it'll take that shape. But when you pour it out, it'll just be part of the whole universe.
I love how you come up with all these images, It's really it's really great. You see music being ceremonial or religious or personal. Where would you say would you put your music?
I try not to be boxed by anyone. As soon as you get boxed into being this or being that, then you lose your freedom.
So are you afraid of being labeled?
I'm not afraid of being labeled, but it's more, it's more free when you are not being labeled. There's more freedom. You can be anyone. Just like the example that I gave you before, like the water. Water itself, until it is being poured into a glass or a bottle or any shape of vase, it's free form. But when it is, when it is put into a Coca-Cola bottle, it becomes a Coca-Cola.
I went to music school, and I learned a lot about music theory. And to me, back then, that negated a lot of the fun I had in music. And what you're describing is very different because it shows me the freedom in music. Me back then music was like a construct.
What is the basic thing that we all want? Whatever we do, we want to be happy. If you are playing music and if you are being typecast into certain thing, then I think that takes away the fun,
Actually, the thing is, it's also called to play music, right? And to play is fun. So that would make sense. Yeah. Let me just jump back to your upbringing. I know that you grew up in India, but I don't know much more. Would you say about that?
I was born in Tibet and then exiled into India with my parents. That was probably in early 70s. And then my dad passed away in Nepal. Those days, parents, just coming out of Tibet, during those times, it was like the Cultural Revolution full on. So our elders were probably going through a whole lot of trauma. When my dad passed away, my mother sent me to Tibetan Children's Village School in India. Yeah, I got admission as a semi-orphan kid with 20 other kids. Remember taking a train from Nepal to India. And it was quite a thing. Then there was probably 2 adults who were looking after all the kids. I do vividly remember that exact moment, standing on a train platform and then a long thing coming towards you with full light inside. And I was thinking, wow, there's this amazing moving house coming towards me. I can totally see myself as a little kid standing on that and thinking that exact thought. I was like a little scared, going somewhere, but then amazed at the train arriving towards you, thinking that it's an amazing, long, moving house. That was the first time when I saw a Punjabi person with a turban. Those days, Punjabis were allowed to carry their sword. Because they're, like real Punjabis, Sikh, they actually have 5 things that they have to carry. And one of them was sword. And I was so scared looking at this giant guy with a long beard and turban. 2 things that I remember out of that journey was the Punjabi guy and the long train that felt like a moving house.
And did you miss your parents?
I mean, as a kid, you would miss them. My dad passed away. I don't even remember his face because he passed away very young when I was super young. And then my mom, afterwards, she couldn't bear the heaviness of not being around her kids. So she followed us and then she came to India without knowing anything. She was a nomad. She didn't speak any Indian or any other language other than Tibetan. And then somehow she managed to get a job in Tibetan Children's Village in Manali, which is the Patlakul school, which is about 12 hours drive from Dharamsala. I was being looked after by foster parents. And then my mother, she was looking after 100 other kids in a 12 hours drive from Dharamsala to Manali. And so she was looking after that many kids, but not her own kids. That alone tells us a whole giant story of how the Tibetan refugee story was back then, totally scattered. Everybody was doing their bits just to keep the Tibet struggle alive, and the hope. All the others were super charged up to do whatever they can for the cause of Tibet. They will sacrifice almost anything. And I think that part of Tibetanness, that part of the feeling within a Tibetan, I've ever seen in the later generation. I think in our elder generation, who just came out of Tibet, were totally dedicated. They will do road works, they will do farming, any kind of thing that they can get.
So then you went into TCV head on as a kid, and how was that?
Yeah.
Did you like going to school?
I loved it.
Okay.
TCV, there was 3,000 other kids. It's like a giant playground. Like it was fun. At times they were, like as a kid, I wish I was with my mother or my relatives. Majority of the time, I really had heaps of fun. Like I was making friends with almost every, second kid. And the good thing was everybody was there with a story.
Yeah.
Story to tell. So there was no time for poor me kind of thing. Because everybody was, like everybody had a story. Yeah. There was no time to pity yourself.
I mean, nevertheless, did you think you ever try to deal with your own story, with your own trauma?
I think everybody was going through that same story of losing one's country, and then everyone has left their parents or relatives. And so, in a way, it was a huge village where therapy was happening naturally.
Amongst each other, you mean?
Yeah. Because, there is somebody who can listen to you. It's not like you are telling somebody a story that they can't comprehend. They will have empathy.
And at what stage did music come into your life?
I think I was in probably grade 5 or something. When I was growing up in my school, we have this little book called auto book. Each student would keep one of those books, and then it would say, like, if you were my classmate, I would give my book to you and say, hey, Damri, can you write something about yourself in this book? And then, yeah, so it's kind of like a Facebook before the Facebook.
Yeah.
It says my name, blah, 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 my aim, blah, 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 and like all this list of things that you would want to do in the future. And I think around the grade 5 onwards, whenever it said my aim, I have written a singer/English teacher.
But why did you want to become a singer? What was the motivation behind it? Were you looking for attention?
No, I always loved humming as a kid. Yeah, it's something in me wherever I go. Probably these days, even if I'm with you in the city, you will find me at one point. I'm humming along to something. And then also, I've always loved hearing songs and how music elevates your feelings. And music has been a beautiful friend. Like I can just lean on. There's music for any kind of emotion that arises. So, and then growing up in Tibetan Children's Village, there is like Indian music, Indian classical music, then Indian devotional music, and then the Bollywood music. In Dharamsala, it's a hub of all the Tibetans who come, they come there. So you have almost every genre of Tibetan music and Tibetan songs that you will encounter. I loved hearing all the elders sing and do korshe in Dharamsala. They used to be in that McLeodganj center where the Narrow shop is. Those people who have been to Dharamsala, McLeodganj, you'll know what I'm talking about. It used to be a bus stop. And on ceremonial days, all the elders would get together and do a big circle dance in that place. Those days, whenever His Holiness returns back from a big tour in Europe or America or overseas, then we would go to welcome him. And then afterwards, everybody ends up at that space and does like dancing and singing. Music has actually karmically left a huge imprint.
And how did it happen that you picked up an instrument?
The instrument dranyen is like probably the instrument for any Tibetan. For listeners, if they don't know what I'm talking about, it's a bit like lute, bit like banjo, bit like a ukulele, but taller. It's a string instrument, and it can be double string as well. And it has got a little bit tone like banjo, but not as twangy as banjo. The dranyen has more earthy tone. Dranyen is a beautiful instrument. I think it carries a whole lot of weight of all the Tibetan stories that is being told through songs. Dranyen is a very lone star. If you go to any gathering in Tibetan community around the globe, there will be dranyen. None of the other Tibetan instruments, I think, carries that much weight to tell the stories of the Tibetan people. I think dranyen is an amazing instrument, 3-string, and it just rotates around 7 notes in 2 bars, and it's a very simple instrument. And I have a very special dranyen called, I name her Meto. Just calling her dranyen feels like, like guitar. Every guitar is a guitar. Like there will be million of guitar, and it'll be all guitar, and there's no personal touch to it. So same like that, every dranyen is a dranyen. But my dranyen has a name, Meto, and it's like I feel close to her. Whenever I travel, I talk about Meto. Meto is now boarding on the train or boarding on the bus or boarding on the plane to go to New York. Meto is now on this festival. It's almost like a friend, and it's actually not almost like a friend. She is my friend, traveling buddy.
When did that relationship start?
Probably when I started making more music.
Is that your first dranyen?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
My proper first dranyen, yeah. And not the dranyen that I got to play at school, but the first proper dranyen that I owned. I thought it's like flower.
When you were describing Tibetan music, I was also thinking about how I would try and describe music. Obviously, I'm not as well versed as you. And I was thinking that Tibetan music or classical music sounds not rushed. It kind of lingers. It's sometimes quite repetitive, actually. There's like the repetitions are there, and I thought that music's ideal in these vast landscapes of the Himalayan plateau. That's why it pierces maybe through and right into our hearts.
Whenever somebody asks about Tibetan music, they will straight away say the monks chanting. It's the only thing that is known by the West, or the deep throat chanting or singing bowl. But those are monastic music. But there's a difference between the monastic music and the layperson's music. Monastic music is lyrically, it's prescribed beforehand already. You can't change the lyrics because
like the mantra.
Actually, it's all like the text that are written in 8th century or 7th century, or like the way of Bodhisattva. But layperson's music has, it tells the story of now. Like if you are writing music now, you would tell the story of how you, as a Tibetan living in Berlin, experiencing the world. And so there's difference in that, I think. And then also Tibetan music has so many different elements. The nomads have beautiful way of singing. It's almost like you can totally hear the space, the plateau, the mountain in the nomadic music. But then in the central Tibetan music, Nagma Terche, you will totally hear the aristocrats and the Lhasa kind of feeling. So each region has its own feeling from Kham, from Ngari, like Kongbo. Each has its own rhythmic patterns and melodic patterns and the phrases that they use. A lot of the time, actually, the language itself and the accent of the language plays a big role in how the melodies are formed. So in that way, like each region has its own uniqueness.
You were experiencing and listening to all these different influences of Tibetan music. When did your own creativity step in? So when did you start writing your own songs?
We all actually like telling our stories in some ways or another. We share our stories. Either sometimes you share your stories through conversation with somebody, but then there is a way of sharing a story through melody, which is like your experiences of certain things probably transformed by putting it to a music. So the emotion of that feeling will be elevated. Yeah, so I really enjoyed singing. When I was growing up in TCV school, I used to say that I wanted to be a singer. So during those days, just before the evening study time, I used to like singing to all my classmates. And then we used to just break into dances and songs. And, like, I think Tibetans
What were
are
you singing?
like sometimes in Hindi, sometimes in Tibetan, and sometimes, the songs that you have heard.
Do you remember your first own song?
I can't really remember my first own song. I must have been, like singing as a child, just making up songs, like stories, and then singing them in melodies, telling stories about a forest in a melody, just singing to yourself, or, like how I would like to be that tree. As a kid, your imagination is wild, and then you see a tree in the dark, and you see the tree is kind of looking like a person moving around, and so you make up stories with those things.
Did you present your songs to somebody else, like to your friend? Hey, listen, I have this new song in my head. You want to hear it? How did this evolve?
Not really, not during the school days, but when I went into the university. At universities, there are, like stage for musical nights. So you go up and I want to sing this song, and you learn the song and get up on stage and play the song to the people who are there. So I do remember doing those kind of things. When I was in Delhi, I think I was one of those odd Tibetans who loved going to Indian classical music concerts. I don't think I've seen any Tibetan other than me in Delhi, because a lot of my Tibetan friends were totally into Bollywood music and they would go to cinemas. But I would go to Indian classical concerts and, like one rag goes for like hour and a half long. With Indian classical music, you have to have a real patience. And with that patience, you develop the love for that music. It's not like 5-minute song.
You were at university and you started performing for the first time in public.
Yeah. So my own songs, or probably some made up mash, or songs that I liked, probably Beatles.
And what was the reaction to your music like? Because I remember that I read somewhere that you said there was a time when many did not know what to make of your work and music.
Oh yeah, when I started writing music like as properly, I totally loved doing something that couldn't be boxed. So it wasn't traditional Tibetan song, but then at the same time, it has got an element of tradition. If I can describe my music in terms of food, then it has that quality of tsampa, but tsampa being mixed with a cheese that came from France, or a butter that came from America or the tea bag that came from Berlin. But at the same time, the essence of tsampa is always there in that mix. I always try my best to keep that Tibetanness, the essence of Tibet in my sound, in my creation of music or writing music. I think I wasn't doing any of the Tibetan pop genre. And so it was kind of very funny. When I started playing music, the Tibetan communities around in Australia would ask me to come and play for them during those days when they to raise funds, because my music, it's more inclusive and probably reaches out to wider audience. But then when they have their Losar celebration or just the Tibetan celebration, they will not invite me to play because I think my Tibetan friends haven't developed the ears beyond the Tibetan pop genre. So they would go, you don't have to come to the sing at the Losar celebration, but they will invite me to the fundraising because then they want all the wider Australians to come and pay tickets
Does that
to
annoy
come to
you?
see
Does it
the
annoy
concert.
you?
No, it did. No, initially, I'm a Tibetan person, a full-blooded Tibetan who loves Tibet and have Tibet story through my music. But I think I was a little bit away from the whole, what is that called, the genre of Tibetan pop. I was actually experimenting a lot. My music has, like element of Tibetan music wrapped in a worldly sound.
Let me take you back to the topic of the university and Australia. There was a gap in between. Did you study in India or did you already go to Australia for that?
Oh, no, I studied in India. Like I did all my schools like till 12th grade at Tibetan Children's Village School in Dharamsala. And then I went to Chandigarh University in India. I was a good student. I was having lots of fun. Like I think universities, the time in universities, it's meant to make friends and widen your worldly view. And I think time in university is to have fun as part of the life, experiment. So that's when I actually experimented a lot with music. I went to Indian classical music. I went to learn tabla. I went to learn Tibetan music. I was listening to all sorts of genre like avant-garde music and total experimental. I would listen to anything that I can get hold of, which expands my view on music.
What were you studying?
I got the school scholarship. So I studied economics and geography and Indian history. It's total, like there's no use of those three subjects that I've studied in my present life.
I can appreciate that because you know what? You're talking to an economist as well. So we have something in common there.
I took that subject because I think all my friends were taking that subject. So I tagged along with my friends and took that subject, but I wasn't good at it at all.
Did you already know you were going to do music in your life by then?
It's funny actually. When I was growing up, since grade 5, I said to all around my friends, I said I want to be a singer. And then when I was leaving for Australia, I had this sudden urge of, like pack your instrument with you. No, I had this vision in something happened in my heart in India when I was like getting ready to come to Australia. I was thinking about how wonderful would it be if I can actually share my music with wider Australian people that I will be meeting when I get there. And so in a way, I just, sometimes when you wish for something wholeheartedly, sometimes it can happen, like something will manifest in that purity if you have wished for it, and not only wished, but also work for it as well. If you just wish for it, it will just stay as a wish, but, wish for it and then put effort in. So when I came to Australia, I did put a whole lot of effort. People see me on social media. All my Tibetan friends, they go, Tenzin, you're so busy. You are at this place, that place, always doing a concert. But they don't see the amount of work that you put in to even just do one concert, how much effort you have in and all the
Preparation,
yeah. So
work.
for a musician, you have to apply for a job every every month.
Yeah,
Yeah. So in a way, you have to have that drive.
Does that
No.
worry you to be a freelancer? Does that make you?
No, it's there is that part which can be hard, but then at the same time, I get to share all these amazing stories that I can tell through the music. And it's not only my story. When I'm telling a story, it carries my own community with me as well. So we are born into this struggle. We are born as a Tibetan. So whether you like it or not, you are born into a responsible.
I imagine at some stage there was some kind of breakthrough and there were more emails or requests coming in.
Yeah, I mean, when I first came to Australia, I was working in disability services, looking after disabled, mentally and physically beings. At the same time, I was also working in a shop called Kathmandu, which is like a mountaineering shop, like a gears that you buy for mountaineering or travel. So I was working in those two places. At the same time, on weekends, I would go and do my music when I can. And then I thought I was not happy, like I always wanted to spend full time on music, put more effort into that. So, when I first came to Australia, a friend asked me to come to a festival. One of the biggest festival in Southern Hemisphere is called Woodford Folk Festival. 180,000 people come there.
Wow.
For 6 days. Probably 2,000 artists come there to perform. Since coming to Australia, I've always taken part in that festival. It's a 6-day festival. And during those days, at one stage, I said, okay, let me leave the job and concentrate on music. I think after 2 years of living in Australia. And it worked. So then I never looked back. I just left. And then, you just have to keep persisting.
Was it like a final push for you to say, look, I'm going to give myself these 2 years and try it? Was there a reason behind it?
I just wanted to be doing what I love.
How old were you then?
Which was music. Probably 26, 25, 26, around that time. And I knew it would be hard. It would be hard road. Because there will be, like at times I'll be staying idle with nothing to do in terms of jobs. And then, but at the same time, the joy of doing music was actually another reason, very quiet. Probably I'm not boasting about it, but I think this is a very quiet in the back of my mind. It's always there. Is when I do music, I will be able to tell stories. And my own story carries a larger story of my ancestors and my families and my mother and my father. So I'll be able to actually share that story with the wider world. You get lost in the busy world. When you go into Berlin City, who will care about you being a Tibetan? Like when I go into Brisbane City, who will care about you being a Tibetan? But when you have a stage to stand on and sing your heart out and tell a story, there's 100 people, 2,000 people, 5,000 people. They all will be looking up and listening to you. They will lend your ears and they will listen to your story. Actually, that story carries the story of your father, your mother, and then your community, and then in larger world, your Tibet story. So That was a very subtle thing that always stayed in my mind. I think that was one of the biggest reason when I actually pushed myself to do it. Like who is out there who is telling the Tibetan story other than occasionally we would come onto the television when His Holiness the Dalai Lama comes into visits our shows. And then when there's like a breaking news, maybe once a year those days, then a Tibet story would be out. But then rest of the days in our life, who is sharing our story? That's why I think having artists in our community is super important. Artists who can go out there, filmmakers, songwriters, painters, poets, authors, all kinds of art. I think art has an amazing power in telling stories of us as a Tibetan, and then us as Tibetan living in Australia, us as living on Asia Pacific region, us as living on this planet. First, you start from yourself, and then, as His Holiness says, first try to change yourself, and then slowly change the world.
Tibet is in the news or in the headlines less and less every day, right? You said that Tibet was in the news once a year. I think nowadays Tibet is in the news even less.
That's why I think we really need to nurture the Tibetan artists. But then at the same time, I don't know why they are not investing so much in the art.
The roots are gone. We have to make a living. Everyday reality is a fact. Financial doubt creeps in. Arts in itself doesn't have the image of giving you a secure job, like you said before, right? So it takes a very strong mind to be an artist.
If you look into our community, the art community of Tibetan in Dharamsala, in Delhi, in Europe, like the young artists, they are all passionate and want to do something. But at the same time, there is something lacking in the support that our community gives to the artists, the art world of Tibet. I think we are more concerned about preserving an art form that we call it traditional art. A lot of the time, the majority of the Tibetan tries to tell the Tibetan story through the traditional art form, I think. And then maybe also through the pop songs, like the pop music. But the world is an oyster. There's so many spaces. There's amazing platforms for exhibiting your paintings, amazing spaces for musicians, amazing spaces for filmmakers, storytellers, poets. If you put enough effort, there is a world out there that you can tell your story.
Tibetan arts, for me, was always strongly connected with religion, like tankas, the music with the mantras. So for me, it was very religion connotated, and I'm not that interested in that topic. So I somehow had a slight disconnect with Tibetan traditional art.
A lot of the time, actually, Tibetan art world, they do give more emphasis, more time to the traditional art forms, but not to the contemporary art forms. If you want to be wanting to share with a wider audience, I think you have to, we have to nurture every forms of art form. There are Tibetans who are like amazing contemporary artists, painters. If we have more arts in our community, I think our worldview will be wider as well. It will enhance our story itself.
And after you decided to become a full-time musician and totally focused on that, and after many years, of continuing to do so, in 2020, you were nominated for the Grammy for songs from the Bardo.
Yeah.
How did you hear about that?
It's an honor to be nominated, having your work being recognized in that way. I'm not the only one, our Tibetan, prior to me, amazing artist, Tibetan artist, Ngawang Khecho, was also nominated for Grammy. Funnily enough, Ngawang Khecho also started his music in Australia and then he moved to America. So I think there is something to do with us being in Australia and Tibetan music. There is something. And Yangchen Lhamo was also actually first, she started from Australia, and she started branching out into the world of music. And there was another amazing Tibetan artist called Tenzin Choegyal who didn't live too long, but if he lived long enough, I think you would have heard his name. He was like doing amazing things. I think it's the space that you get in Australia, like super relaxed, and then people are always open to collaborate. And, like, as you said in the beginning, how did I make that music where there's like a Yidaki didgeridoo and a Morinhur player and Tibetan. In that same space, you didn't see an Iranian opera singer was there too. In that creation, I created two pieces. So one was with the same three of us with the Iranian opera singer. So it was amazing. So, like all sorts of things happen like that.
What feeling like when you heard, whoa, I'm nominated for the Grammy?
I think my friends were more happy than it was amazing how all my Tibetan friends were so happy. But they were so happy for me that it felt almost like they were being nominated. It had that feeling when I was receiving the messages from my Tibetan friends around the globe. We, as a Tibetan, we don't really get many accolades in the world of things. Like the small little things that make you happy for a little while. So, like these award things means a lot to, especially to my Tibetan friends. They felt like, I was achieving something and achievement was almost like their own achievement. And because being Tibetan, your story is a connected story that is scattered, always looking for home. I think I've stopped looking for home these days. That feeling of not having your own land.
Do you feel at home in Australia?
I feel at home wherever I am. I used to be very, what is that called? Edgy, where I kind of go, I don't belong here, I don't belong here. But as you grow up, I think you relax into it and you relax into your own self. And you become home within yourself. And there's one thing that I've started saying, Tibet resides within me. I don't have to actually go out there to sit on a land and say, I'm living in Tibet.
What changed after the Grammy nomination for you?
Probably people started giving a heat. People started giving, oh yeah, okay, Tenzin is doing something different and being recognized. And so I think it was a positive welcome to the world of being received as, oh yeah, he makes music and his music makes sense. I think in that
Did you
way.
get requests to play with other people, to collaborate?
I was
to open doors?
I think so, yes and no. Because sometimes people go, maybe I can't reach to him. So you have to reach to them. Go, hey. But definitely these kind of recognitions, they do open doors, like spaces that you haven't been before, wider spaces for your own exploration. So I'm actually working on a project called Be the Sky with my dear friend Phil Glass. Over the years, we have collaborated on so many occasions. So for this year, for the 90th birthday celebration of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I thought it might be nice to put out an album with my dear friend. So we called it Be the Sky. The full album will come out around the end of November, the Be the Sky album. It's a metaphor, like about be happy with your mind where you are. Be comfortable with yourself.
Have you always felt comfortable in your own skin?
Yeah, I think so. When the thoughts arises, just let them dissolve in its own self, like anger, jealousy. All these are little emotions and thoughts that just sits in the space of the mind. The thought behind Be the Sky is that, but album itself is quite beautiful. I've got more than 100 kids, Tibetan little kids, singing in one song. It's amazing that I get to work with Philip because I love his music. So he actually composed the music for movie Kundun as well, and I love that soundtrack. It's one of my favorite soundtrack. Your name, Namri. I really like your name. It sounds like a song. Namri. Nam meaning sky, Ri mountain. It's a poem in 2 words. Who actually thought of giving that name to you? Your mom or your dad?
Probably my father. I'm not really sure. But let's stop talking about me and some more about you and your work. You've collaborated with so many people like Philip Glass, or this year with Michael Stipe from REM, playing at the Carnegie Hall for the Tibet House benefit. What's it like when you meet somebody else, like a famous musician or an artist, for a jam, let's say? How does that work when you meet for the first time?
When you do a collaboration with anyone, I think the first thing that you have to do is do what you do best, that you have been doing for all these years. Don't change just because you are playing with somebody and then you try to do something different that you have not been doing. There's only one of Namri on this planet, and you are a very unique being. Anything that you do will not be able to be done by anyone else on this planet. So you have to have that kind of faith in yourself. But at the same time, you are same as any other human beings, or emotionally, things that you can do, no one else will be able to do. They can copy you, imitate you, but not the way you will do it. So having that faith in yourself, you are a unique being, one in 7.2 billion human beings. When you encourage yourself in that way, whatever you do, you will do it from your heart, because you are giving your full. You are doing what you do best, because there is only one of you.
And you're the one-of-kind dranyen player. Nevertheless, I saw that you dabbled with acting as well.
That was one of my friends. He said, "Oh, you want to act in my film?" And I said, "I'm a super bad actor." And it was a short film, so I took the challenge. So I had to go to Vietnam, and it was fun. It's a film by Tenzin Choegyal, and I'm supposed to be a Tibetan married to a Vietnamese lady and has a daughter. So the story is about the feeling of being stateless in Vietnam. And it was a Tibetan anthology film made by 4 Tibetan directors, 4 different stories, and I was part of one of the story. It had its world premiere at Busan Film Festival, and then went to a couple of other film festivals.
So is acting just once in a lifetime experience, or are you going to continue doing more acting?
I think if my friends ask me, I will do it, because I think it was because of my friend who is the director of the film. So I trusted in him.
Like with your music, you said before, it's important for you to work with friends. It seems as if you value friendship strongly.
Yeah. Because I'm not an actor. I did realize during the shooting of the film, like my friend, director Tenzin Choegyal, he said, "Okay, now you have to walk from here to there, and with a feeling like this." So he described the scene. As soon as he said action, and I started walking, and I just found myself thinking, shit, I'm walking.
It felt unnatural, I guess.
Yeah. So it's like, how do I walk? I just realized, I've forgotten how I walked.
It's like when you talk to somebody and you talk in a casual way, you put that same person in front of the microphone or camera, suddenly we all change and we talk differently.
Yeah. It's so funny when he said action, and I was like, what? I'm supposed to walk, and how do I walk? It's like I was
And when you sit in front of a microphone and you start singing, does that feel natural to you? Or do you still feel there's a distance between you and the microphone?
with singing. I think I'm quite natural. If I'm singing in front of 3 people or 100 people or 1,000, doesn't matter. I close my eyes and then I go into my own world. I just go traveling in my own world.
Hmm.
Like you will be watching me sing, but I'm going so many places. In that regard, I think acting and singing are totally different.
Are you afraid that Tibetan music will die at some stage? What do you think can we do about it?
This planet has to die any kind of music.
What do you mean?
Unless this planet dies, that planet that we are living on, maybe another big bang will happen, and then any music will be on. Until then, I think music will keep on surviving. Music will keep on evolving. It will have the traditional music interpreted in different ways. It will have new music. Like music will evolve. It'll always be there.
And you know what?
So
my piano teacher, she once told me, without music, life would be a mistake. With that being said, I would like to thank you very much, Tenzin, for being part of this podcast episode. And talking to you was great.
Thank you, Namri. I really love your name.
I hope you enjoyed this Out of Tibet podcast. Before you leave, I want to let you know that I'm doing this podcast in my own free time, and I pay for all the equipment and software needed for recording or brushing up the audio. Therefore, it'd be great if you'd consider supporting me financially on my Patreon or PayPal, so I can continue making more free podcasts for you guys. Please check the show notes for all the details how to support this podcast financially. And if you don't happen to have any money to spare, I would love it if you'd subscribe, give this podcast 5 stars, left a positive review with Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Thank you very much in advance and hope to see you in Tibet